Hey guys, what's up? I've been playing this game for a long time now, some might say too long, and in the nearly 5,000 hours I have tallied in it, I've seen far too many blueberries running activities with any kind of synchronized build equipped. Even with all the videos players far better than me have made and posted, I've decided to put 5 Warlock builds, one for each subclass, into a single video. That means no cherry picking around finding the build for subclass X or Y. The builds in this list can be used not just for strikes and low-end activities, but also higher level ones like Grandmasters and Legendary Lost Sectors. I can guarantee you will have so much more fun in this game with a loadout that allows you to plough through enemies rather than struggling against the yellow bar. Without further ado, here are my top 5 Warlock builds everyone should have. We are starting this list off with the first of the Darkness subclasses, Stasis. The purpose for this build is to put down as many turrets as possible. Basically, everywhere you go, follow the concept of, if there's an empty space, fill it. I cannot tell you how many times this build has come in handy, like for the Strangers in Time challenge or the second encounter for Garden of Salvation. This loadout is brilliant to control the flow of ads, even in a large area. Here is how it works. Starting with the aspects, we have Bleak Watcher. This is the whole concept of this build. It allows you to turn your grenades into an icicle firing turret. Following that, we have Ice Flare Bolts. When you shatter a frozen target, you basically turn them into a cold snap grenade, which then freezes other targets around them. Moving on to the fragments, we have Whispering Torment, turning all the damage you take into grenade energy. Next is Whisper of Fissures, increasing the damage and size of the burst from shattering a frozen target. Then it's Whisper of Chain. You take less damage when near a frozen target. And finally, Whisper of Refraction. The abilities used for this build are Healing Rift, Penumbral Blast, and Cold Snap Grenades. Moving on to the armour. All great builds need a great exotic. For this one, we are using the Omnimancy Gloves, allowing your Cold Snap Grenades to have an additional charge. You can hold a total of 2 nades at a time, increasing the likelihood of always having one at the ready. Omnimancy Gloves also make your grenades recharge faster when they impact an enemy. This means each time your turret shoots something, you get energy back for your grenades. The mods for the armour are as follows. For the helmet, we have 2 lots of Ashes to Assets and a heavy ammo finder. On the gauntlets, you want firepower, impact induction, and momentum transfer. The chest armor mods, we have damage resistant mods. These can be changed depending on the encounter or environment you find yourself in. For me, I've chosen to put stasis reserves in the last slot, as I like to run a stasis fusion rifle with this build. Leg mods are as followed: 2 sets of innovation, and in the last slot, recuperation. For the bomber taking up 2 slots, and disruption in the last. When speccing into a Warlock, you want to focus on getting your discipline and resilience to 100 first. Then start getting the other ones as high as you can. Most Warlock subclasses have a way to turn your grenade into a useful buff, or even getting another ability energy from it. This will be the same shtick for all the builds in this list. Get your discipline and resilience to 100, then focus on the other 4. People will say that having triple 100 stats is extremely important, but honestly, getting the first 2 to 100 and getting the other ones as high as you can will be way more beneficial for the average player. The weapons used for this build aren't as important as they would be for some of the other ones. Personally, when I run this build, my loadout would be Deliverance Fusion Rifle with Demolitionist and Chill Clip in my kinetic slot, and for my energy, I tend to run an Unforgiven that has Demolitionist and Rampage. Having the Demolitionist perk in both weapons adds the speed at which you can get your grenade back. The Chill Clip is a nice bonus to slow and freeze targets if your turrets aren't focusing on the ones you would like them to. The second Warlock build in this list is Arc, probably the weakest of the Warlock subclasses, but with the potential of being something amazing. This build is all about abilities, getting them back and using them as much as you would a weapon. To do this, we spec into creating Ionic Traces, which gives a 12.5% energy to nades and melees, and a 15% for your class ability for each pickup. The aspects used for this build are Electrostatic Mind, This aspect allows you to create ionic traces by defeating targets with your abilities, as well as creating them when you defeat jolted and blind targets. The second one is Arc Souls. Casting your Rift gives you an Arc Soul. This, paired with the previous aspect, Electrostatic Mind, allows your Arc Souls to also create ionic traces. But also, who doesn't like having a little friend to commit several counts of murder for you? For fragments, we have Spark of Discharge. Arc weapons can create ionic traces. Following that, you have Spark of Magnitude. Your lingering arc grenades have an extended duration. Next is Spark of Shock. Arc grenades jolt targets. And finally, Spark of Resistance. You can become more resistant to damage when surrounded. Abilities to use for this build are Healing Rift, Chaining Lightning as it causes jolting, and Pulse Grenades. The exotic for this is the Vesper of Radiance chest piece, allowing your rifts to periodically release an arc shockwave. When you're using an arc subclass, these shockwaves will blind your enemies. This exotic also makes your rift recharge faster when you're surrounded by targets. The armor mods to use for this build: on your helmet, put Ashes to Assets, Dynamo, and then Heavy Ammo Finder. Gauntlet mods are Blistering Detonation, Impact Induction, and Momentum Transfer. For your chest armor, put on Damage Resist mods, and then Charged Up. The last one isn't that important, so you can put on a +10 stat mod if needed. The leg armor mods are Innovation, Recuperation, and for the final mod slot is Arc Surge, as you will be running at least one arc weapon, maybe two. On your bond, you'll want to put Bomber, Powerful Attraction, and finally Disruption. For the weapon loadout, it's important to use an arc elemental weapon due to the Spark of Discharge fragment, having a chance to create ionic traces when using one to defeat targets. I personally use Trinity Ghoul. Risk Runner is another great option as well. When my exotic is being used in another slot, I turn to the Aikilos SMG with Feeding Frenzy and Volt Shot on it. As this isn't a build I would run in an activity or encounter needing a lot of DPS, I would use Song of Uriut or Thunderlord as an exotic option. And number 3 on the list is Solar. For me, this subclass is like an old friend. Up until the Starfire nerf, it was practically the only one I used. The survivability of it is second only to Void, but with the added bonus of a Well of Radiance, this subclass becomes a must-have in raids, dungeons, and Grandmasters. This is a support build. The goal is to keep your allies alive and prepared for the next fight. The aspects for this build are as follows. Heat Rises. Consume your grenade to gain the Heat Rises buff, allowing you to fire weapons, use your melee, and throw grenades while gliding. But you aren't using it for the first perk, rather the secondary perk. Consuming your grenade releases a burst of healing energy that cures you and nearby allies as well. The second aspect, Touch of Flame. Your healing, solar, firebolt, and fusion grenades have enhanced functionality. Solar grenades' lingering duration is increased, as well as periodically erupting blobs of lava around the perimeter. Fragments used for this are Ember of Char. Solar Ignition spreads Scorch to affected targets. Ember of Ash, you apply more Scorch stacks to targets. Ember of Singeing, your class abilities recharge faster when your targets are scorched. And finally, Ember of Resolve. Solar Grenade Final Blows cure you. For this build, the solar abilities you will want are Healing Rift. Both melees are great for this, I just prefer Celestial Fire. And Solar Grenades. The exotic for this build is Zenith's Mask, which steadily reloads a portion of your equipped trace rifle. Damaging a vehicle or major target with a trace rifle will mark them, and when an ally kills this target, it will drop a special ammo for you and a heavy ammo for your allies. The helmet mods are Heavy Ammo Finder and Solar Siphon. For the gauntlets, we have 2 slots of Harmonic Loader and Harmonic Dexterity. By using Harmonic mods, as I'm using a solar weapon for this solar build, it does the same thing for cheaper. On your chest, we have Damage Resist mods as normal, and then Charged Up. Leg mods are Harmonic Scavenger, allowing me to get even more special ammo for my trace rifle. Then there's Recuperation, and Solar Surge mods, to spend the many ammo charges you will get from the mass of explosions made. For your bond, you should be using Bomber, then Reaper, and finally powerful attraction. This build does require you to run a trace rifle. I would highly advise running a solo one. My pick is Cassia's Dejection. I have Reconstruction and Incandescent. Gotta say, it's a lot of fun and deals with ads very nicely. Next up is Strand, the second Darkness subclass and the newest addition to the character menu. This build is inherently evil, using the pure power of darkness to tear your enemies apart with as little effort as possible. This build is also great at handling and killing champions, so if you are someone who struggles against them, then this might be exactly what you need. As always, we start with the aspects. First is the Wanderer. Tangles you throw attach to targets and detonate into a suspending burst. Destroying a tangle creates a suspending burst after a short delay. Mind Spun Invocation. Your grapple, shackle, and threadling grenades have enhanced functionality. For fragments, we have Thread of Continuity. Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. Thread of Binding. Super final blows emit a suspending burst from the target. And finally, Thread of Warding. Picking up an orb of power grants Woven Mail. The abilities for this are Healing Rift, Arcane Needle, and Shackle Grenades. We're using the exotics Necrotic Grips. Damaging combatants poison them, dealing increased damage over time. Defeating the poisoned combatant spreads the corruption. On your helmet, put the mods Kinetic Siphon, Heavy Ammo Scout, and Heavy Ammo Finder. On the gauntlets, Momentum Transfer, Bolstering Destination, and Kinetic Loader. For the chest mods, we have Damage Resists and Charged Up. On the legs, put Strand Weapon Surges, Stacks on Stacks, and Recuperation. The bond mods are Bomber, Outreach, and Powerful Attractions. The weapon choice for this loadout are either Thorn or Austria Trigger. These weapons of sorrow poison your enemies on hit. Austria is probably the better option in my opinion. It's the one I use the most. This loadout is an absolute beast at clearing through not just regular combatants but high level mages. This Voidwalker build allows you to solo encounters designed for an entire fire team and with a full health bar to boot. The aspects used are Feed the Void. Defeating combatants with a Void ability activates Devour. Your Devour effects are improved, restoring additional health and grenade energy. The second aspect is Chaos Accelerant. Overcharging your grenade, making it deadlier and more effective. The size and duration of Vortex grenades are increased. The fragments we use are Echo of Instability. Defeating a target with grenade grants volatile rounds to your Void weapons. Echo of Undermining. Your Void grenades weaken targets. Echo of Persistence. Your Devour has an increased duration. And finally, Echo of Harvest. Defeating a weakened target creates an orb of power and a Void Breach. The abilities for this build are Healing Rift, Pocket Singularity, and Vortex Grenades. For the exotic, we have Controverse Hold. Resist incoming damage while charging your Void Grenade. Charging Void Grenades return grenade energy on hit. For the helmet mods, we have 2 lots of Ashes to Assets and a Heavy Finder in the last one. For the gauntlets, we have Firepower, Grenade Kickstarter, and Fastball. The chest armor mods we have are Damage Resist mods, then Void Reserves, as you will be pairing Void weapons with this build. Leg mods are as followed: 2 sets of Innovation, and then a Recuperation. For the bond, we have Bomber taking up 2 slots, and then finally Reaper. You will want to use Void weapons for this build, as Echo of Instability gives you volatile rounds, meaning targets hit with them become volatile, and if hit more, will explode. My choices are Unforgiven, that has Demolitionist and Rampage. Having Demolitionist on this weapon adds to the speed at which you will get your grenade back. Then for my power weapon, I'd use Commemoration with Subsistence and Killing Tally. These perks work great together. Subsistence reloading your weapon, and then Killing Tally make every kill increases its damage.